When you look at the political economy
Right.
of these transitions and of these productivity gains, I'm fascinated because many scholars talk about how New Deal policies, or more generally, public investment crowds out private investment.
Right.
And here we're seeing a situation where, first of all, private sector companies are advocating for this public investment in the case of the road system.
Right.
And you're also seeing the idea that those investments improve optimism and inspire private investment, whereas much of the folklore, the anti-Roosevelt folklore, is that his actions were all what you might call discouraging to the private sector and inhibited investment. I'm sure there can be elements of both, but I think this is a fascinating
well, I mean, it's
that.
clearly a very clear and compelling argument about crowding out. You know, but it's really only relevant from either a theoretical or practical standpoint if the economy is close to potential or natural output.
That's right.
But then, as now, we were not close to full employment, so there's no real problem in terms of monetizing government deficits. You're not going to, it's not going to create an inflationary problem, and you're not going to push up real interest rates. I mean, it's true that many, business owners and people who received capital income, didn't like Roosevelt and indeed hated him, thought he was a class traitor and everything. The facts of the matter are that they did very much better under Roosevelt than they did under Hoover.
Yeah.
I mean, every category of capital income, with the exception of bond interest because of the debt deflation mechanism, with the exception of that category, every category of capital income plummets between 1929 and 1933. And again, with the exception of bond interest, every category of capital income increases rather substantially, particularly between 32 and 1937. So I think that when you're in a serious recession or depression, that's not the time to be worrying about crowding out.
Yeah. How do you see the parallels between what you've learned, that what you might call silver lining of the depression, and what prospects lie before us today?
Well, I guess, again, one thing I'd say contextually is, after that initial finding about the Depression, what the book does is really carry the story forward to the present day in terms of trying to put the IT or the ICT revolution in perspective. It also carries it backward into the late 19th century. And, I mean, there's no question whatsoever that our productivity growth revived, particularly after 1995, and that this is attributable to information technology, computers, the internet, cell phones, routers, all of that stuff. It's changed our lives. There's no question about that. But in comparison to the 1930s, it's my view, as it is Bob Gordon's view, I think, and others, that the revolutionary change has been much more narrowly focused in a couple of two-digit manufacturing industries, and now increasingly in some of the industries which use information technology. So if you're asking me to stare into the crystal ball in terms of looking in the future, can I see some grounds for optimism? I can see some grounds, because I think now that broadband has become like almost a commodity, something we can count on, it's widely diffused, we're going to see continuing gains in areas like supply chain management and some probably uses for the internet that we haven't anticipated. So that's going to be a positive factor. But does it mean that we can expect something comparable to the type of total factor productivity gains we saw in the Great Depression? My answer would be no. What's interesting to me about the Great Depression is that there's no single innovation which gives its character to the entire age. But I think what it speaks to is essentially the uniqueness, if you like, or the rather narrow concentration of the information technology boom. I mean, that was just such a disproportion between what was happening in those sectors and the rest of the economy.